what you want to do is find 100% of them. Right now, people estimate we found about 90% of them. Well, that leaves 10% of asteroids. We don't know where they are and whether or not they're going to cross the Earth's orbit with us there anytime soon. So we want to keep watching the skies and finding these things. And then, you want 20 or 30 years notice so you can do something to keep it from hitting the Earth.
So Peter.
Hello, Richard.
How are you?
I'm very, very well.
I'm going to start right out of the gate.
Yes.
Come in hot. How do you feel about Armageddon?
Is this the topic of today's podcast?
It is sort of the topic of today's podcast.
Are you talking about Armageddon as in the biblical sense of Armageddon?
Not the biblical sense of that place where the final battle between good and evil happens. You could argue in some cases, Armageddon, no matter what it is going to refer to some sort of end of the world scenario. In this case, I am referring to the classic, and I am doing air quotes if you're listening, Armageddon the movie.
Oh.
Michael Bay, Jerry Bruckheimer, Bruce Willis stars as the head of a plucky blue-collar...
You lost me at Michael Bay.
Yes. It is the scenario where, and the reason it applies to today's show, is that there is an asteroid barreling down on the Earth. Mm-hmm. It will essentially wipe out everyone. Billy Bob Thornton's essentially the NASA guy.
Perfect. So
and their scenario, yes, of course. And their idea to deal with this existential threat is to send up a drilling team, a deep drilling team, the best deep drilling team, to drill into an asteroid.
You wouldn't want to send up the worst?
No, you wouldn't want. I mean, it made sense right out of the gate. Go with the best.
Yeah.
And of course, there's a great love story with young Ben Affleck and Liv Tyler, and of course Liv Tyler's father, Aerosmith lead singer Steven Tyler.
Aha.
And the song that was part of
I Don't Want to Close My Eyes.
I don't want to close my eyes. I don't want to fall asleep, 'cause I miss you, babe.
Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Garner.
So crooning aside, it was huge. It was a huge movie. It was one of these massive blockbuster, sort of disaster movies, but it really put the scenario on the radar of a lot of people about, what would we do in that? So, of course, what do you do here at the old What If headquarters? You ask those questions. What if we blew up an asteroid? Because I don't know the answer. Do you know the answer?
I've heard a little bit about it, but I would like to explore it a little bit more.
Would you like to defer to somebody who might know the answer?
I think we have a pretty good guest who might be able to talk about this at length.
We happen to have, I think, the perfect guest for probably any what if hypothetical, but this case in particular, the one, the only.
Bill Nye, the science guy.
Yes, we were able to get Bill Nye, the science guy.
I love it when he joins us.
Well, tell us more about him, Pete.
Okay. Bill Nye is a scientist, engineer, comedian, author, and inventor. He's also a man with a mission to help foster a scientifically literate society and to help people everywhere understand and appreciate the science that makes our world work. Bill's classic show, Bill Nye the Science Guy, was nominated for 23 Emmys and won 19. And it paved the way for a career in making science accessible, fun, and super cool. And he's still doing exactly that with his sensationally entertaining and informative podcast, Science Rules with Bill Nye.
Bill, thanks so much for joining us. We're super happy to have you on the show today.
It's so good to be had.
Well, we all love to be had. But before we get into the sort of the bigger what if of what if we blew up an asteroid, we were talking off the top about Armageddon, and I'm assuming A, you've seen it, and B, I was thinking about what is it like to watch a movie with Bill Nye, especially if there's science involved, because I imagine you'd be pointing out what is sort of a stretch and what isn't. If you remember that 1998 classic, deep drilling into an asteroid, was that A, even feasible, and B, what did you think of how they handled the science?
Well, here's the thing about it, you guys. You don't want to blow it up. That's the surprising thing.
Okay, why?
Because you probably get a shower of stuff that's on the same trajectory. You know, as they say, and I only read about this, I'm not involved in research, but Bruce Betts at the Planetary Society is deeply involved in this. A lot of asteroids aren't solid rocks. They're, in the expression, the charming expression in astronomy is they're rubble piles. They're just a loose collection of rocks held together by their mutual gravity. And so if you set off an explosive near them, you would just disperse them, but their overall momentum wouldn't change that much. Like they'd blow apart, but they'd still keep coming. They still keep coming at you. And so it's a very high risk scenario or way to go about trying to deflect.
Because it's raining rocks, basically, is what you're saying. Like basically a bunch of smaller meteorites all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which would be just as deadly, I'm guessing.
It sounds like it. Yeah.
Well, maybe, and maybe worse. If they land all over the place instead of one place. As we say, if you like to worry about things, asteroids are great.
Yes. Bill, they say they tell us that NASA is tracking some 20,000 NEOs, near Earth objects at any one time. What does that process look like?
And you guys, be proud. Canadian Space Agency is deeply involved in that. Canadian Space Agency has an instrument on almost every mission that ever flies that's not from Chinese Space Administration. So what you want to do is find 100% of them. Right now, people estimate we found about 90% of them. Well, that leaves 10% of asteroids. We don't know where they are and whether or not they're going to cross the Earth's orbit with us there anytime soon. So we want to keep watching the skies and finding these things. And then, you want 20 or 30 years notice so you can do something, send Bruce Willis or whatever. You want to do something to keep it from hitting the Earth. And then there's this whole other thing about mitigation where you get everybody to leave Winnipeg. So if it lands there, everybody will be okay. But these are extraordinary things because the Earth is turning, the Earth's going through space. And these objects are largely rock, but many of them also have ice. And then there's other objects that you can't see near them. So their trajectory is pretty predictable, but there's errors or unknowns on the order of a few days, or let's say half a day. So is it going to land in Winnipeg or Vancouver or Tokyo? It's like, whoa, you can't really be sure. Oh, the ice will volatilize, will evaporate, will outgas. That's a good one. Give the thing a little nudge. So predicting it is difficult to predict it with accuracy enough to evacuate cities, for example. And people have thought deeply about this. And so that's why we want to find them all and get ready to give it a nudge.
Yeah, it sounds like the nudge, the deflection is the way to go. And a good hockey reference there, the old deflection. We have a question from our...
Yeah, the defenseman just puts a stick near it and it goes over the goalie's shoulder. Yeah.
So we have a hard enough time tracking them right now. Like you said, 90%, there's still 10%. We have all this incredible technology, telescopes, etc. And now imagine going back to our poor friends, the dinosaurs, who didn't have that ability, that forewarning. And we know about that particular existential event for them. We have a question from somebody in the What If community. Karthik Narayan asks, what if an asteroid the size of one that killed the dinosaurs came close to Earth, didn't necessarily hit us, but got, let's say, within our orbit, close enough to affect the moon or us? Is there danger there as well?
Well, there's a saying, an alliterated saying, a miss is as good as a mile. And mile may not be a reference accessible to many Canadian listeners anymore, but it's, a kilometer and a half. Now, if it misses in general. But if it hits, it's really bad. So on my podcast, Science Rules, we had Jacqueline, the woman who did the analysis on the crater off Chicxulub, what is now Chicxulub, Mexico. And the thing came in so fast. How fast was it? it is supposed that it made the atmosphere into a plasma. This is to say, the atmosphere got so hot there locally that the electrons dissociate from their atoms and the air became opaque.
Wow.
It became so hot that it wasn't transparent to sunlight anymore for, a few seconds. And then the wind from it got to what is now France in a few hours. In other words, the impact was so big and so catastrophic that it affected the world. And this is where geologists, when I was in school, when I was in elementary school, primary school, nobody really knew what happened to the ancient dinosaurs, but now everybody's confident in this, that this was the reason. The cone of the ejected material, the ejecta, was bigger than the diameter of the Earth.
Wow.
What? Yeah, and then this material that we all love so much, iridium, atomic number 77, it's over there, atomic number 77, is all over the Earth because of this impact. And so if it were to hit, that's what happens. If it were to miss, not much would happen. You presume, if I understand her question, the thing is 30 kilometers across, 20 miles across. And that's huge, but compared to the Earth, it's not that big. It's not big at all. It would just go streaking by.
Would it do anything to the gravity of the moon or anything like that?
That's what I was just pondering. I'm just thinking out loud. I don't think it's big enough. We had an earthquake, 6 years ago that gave the Earth's axis a nudge. So I'd have to really, I think it's a clear example of there's no question, absolutely, it depends.
Yeah.
It depends how big the asteroid is, how fast it literally is going, and then how close it came. But I would imagine it would be measurable, but not sensible. In other words, we have instruments that would measure the gravity deflection due to its gravity and motion, but humankind, a person couldn't feel it, I'm imagining.
Well, first of all, this is great stuff. We're going to continue with Bill Nye to talk about what if we blew up an asteroid and everything else, and also talk about a few other cosmological scenarios. But Bill, there's another podcast, I don't want to say a better podcast, another podcast
just as good
that people might be interested in, might be better, called Science Rules with a guy named Bill Nye. Tell us about that.
So it's a podcast I do in two versions. Every week we have somebody on who is an expert in his or her field talking about something cool. We had a gal talking about the asteroid impact. It's just this thing when you're under pressure. Jacqueline, anyway, talking about the asteroid impact. We had expert on psychopathy.
Wow.
If you're a psychopath, then she pronounces psychopathy. We have every 2 weeks we do a coronavirus edition where we're talking about what's happening with this pandemic and how serious it is in the U.S. And you guys, as Canadians, I presume you're like everybody else. My colleagues, I have friends in Denmark and in Japan, they're just shaking their heads like, what are you guys doing? And
a little bit.
This goes back to the beginning of the U.S., where just these systems, these legal systems were in place that just have real limitations that we're going to have to overcome in the next election.
Godspeed.
Yes, Godspeed with that.
Okay, great, Bill. Thanks very much for joining us on the video podcast. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for promoting my podcast.
No problem.
Meanwhile, be safe out there, you all. It's a dangerous world for us right now.
Will do. Thanks, Bill. Wow. So Bill Nye, a guy who knows a lot, also a guy who probably never stops learning.
Doesn't sound like it, does it?
No, and I think you're a guy who likes to never stop learning, am I right?
Not to the same level of absorption, let's say, as a guy like Bill Nye, the science guy, but yes, I love to learn. I love to continue to learn, just like we do every week on this show.
Well, now is the time to continue your studies or your learning because, with COVID-19, we're all at home. Most of us have a little bit of extra time to learn. Well, why don't you become more informed, creative, inspired, relaxed, all with the Great Courses Plus? We're really big fans of this, aren't we, Richard?
Well, so I was at home the other day, and this sounds made up, but it isn't. I'm setting up my smart TV because I just moved, so I'm going through the apps available on my smart TV. There's our old friend, greatcoursesplus.com. I'm thinking maybe I could jump in and get prepared for the Bill Nye episode. Moon rocks. There's a whole episode on moon rocks from the Apollo mission. This Professor Bob Hazen is talking about this, in his words, the scientific bonanza that created 50 years ago when they just came home with a few rocks from the moon. You'd think, well, that's kind of, is it a paperweight? No, they've been actually gleaning tons of scientific info. And then all of a sudden we're talking to Bill Nye earlier, and he's talking about moon rocks and how they've actually helped us understand what the age of our planet, continents here, minerals and elements in the earth. It's incredible the amount of knowledge we've been able to glean from moon rocks, and incredible the amount of knowledge I was able to glean from a GreatCoursesPlus.com episode that I was getting ready for this show.
Well, let me tell you, the Great Courses Plus has not only that, but thousands of lectures on almost any topic imaginable, from the history of Egypt to the study of DNA, and new courses are added all the time. There's someone for everyone, not just moon rock lovers like yourself. Plus, every course is presented, like you say, by subject matter experts from top universities and institutions. It's in-depth, reliable, fact-based information. And you can watch or listen from your phone or your TV with the Great Courses Plus app at any time from anywhere in the world. So make the most of your time. Keep learning with the Great Courses Plus. Right now they're offering fans of this show an amazing deal, an entire month of access for free. This limited time offer won't last, so sign up today to get started. Go to thegreatcoursesplus.com/whatif. Don't wait. Go to thegreatcoursesplus.com/whatif.
I think you meant to say thegreatcoursesplus.com/whatif.
That's, I think, exactly what I said. So let's go there and get your free month.
So perhaps not surprisingly, well, maybe it was surprising to people listening or watching, but if you blow up a massive asteroid, there is that sort of other piece of the puzzle, which is, I don't know, the trillion pieces of that puzzle that are going to turn into mini sort of meteors. And all of a sudden it's not raining, man, it's raining. Yeah. And still there's, maybe the disaster is spread out and it's not as existential in terms of the impact, but you're still going to have massive damage.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's not going to be as existential. I mean, Bill said it himself that it could be even worse. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the number would be. 1 million meteors crashing into Earth. That would be devastation on all corners of the planet rather than just concentrated in one area.
Yeah.
One thing I didn't know about asteroids is that they're not necessarily one large rock.
Yes.
Is that they are a cluster of much
debris or whatever, or rubble, I think was the word he used.
What he said, yeah.
But it's interesting because really, okay, first of all, deflection is the only scenario.
Yeah.
Really, in the end of the day, it's rerouting something, whether it's lasers, whether it's some sort of whatever it is, it's not going to be blow it up. It has to be push it off course away from the Earth. That's pretty much it. And again, the lead up you'd need, you'd have to know it's coming. And as he talked about, we know where a lot of them are coming.
90%. We know where 90% of them are.
Did that reassure you, Peter, that there's 10% that we don't know?
No.
I was surprised I was waiting to hear we know 98.9 and there's maybe a couple of surprises. 10% is a big window. 10%
is a big window, but in just envisioning how large space is, I don't blame anybody for missing 10% of the asteroids on the way.
I'm not throwing shade at the people who are manning the telescopes.
You're on the Millennium Falcon going through a meteor field. Can you count all those things in there?
No, and I mean, and again,
There's a
kudos
lot.
to that incredible piloting skill of Han Solo. But no, I mean, it is interesting that really this is a scenario that's been talked about. We talked about it off the top with movies and whatever, and really it's not feasible because the question marks, the downsides, the risk versus the reward factor too high. It seems like the more you talk about these scenarios, which get entertained, whether it's through sci-fi or whatever else it is, you realize that, yeah, you want to be prepared, but you can only be prepared for so much. And in this case, this doesn't seem like going up there with a nuclear bomb and blowing up an asteroid is even on the table.
No, not at all. Well, if you enjoyed our chat with Bill Nye, the science guy, and want to hear more with him, well, join us in the extended audio version. Just click on the link in the description below, and we'll have more with Bill Nye, the science guy. He'll join us, and we'll talk more about exploding nuclear bombs in space and possible extinction level events.
The scenarios, the ideas about what to do with an asteroid are just fantastic. Make a spacecraft so big, how big would it be that its gravity could be used to tug the asteroid, a gravity tug ship, tug the asteroid off course a little bit. Then you mentioned setting off a nuclear weapon in the hopes that the expanding gases or atoms would give the asteroid a nudge, or set it off so that the material of the asteroid itself would have momentum to give the asteroid a nudge.
Lots more interesting stuff with Bill Nye in the extended audio version. We'll see you next time on What If Discussed.